What is up? Welcome to Etsy Jam, episode 81. Danielle from the Merriweather Council joins us for part one of a two-part series. Today we hear Danielle's story about how she got started as an Etsy seller. And we also talk with her about how you as an online seller can make the most of your web presence and attract an even larger audience than just your immediate shopper base. What is up? Welcome to Etsy Jam, the podcast where we have fantastic conversations about serious topics. I'm Gordon from Marmalead.
And I am Richie from Marmalead. And you're probably wondering, what is Marmalead? Well, Marmalead gets your products found with real shopper keywords. So if you sell on Etsy, you want to check out Marmalead because we take the guesswork out of getting found on Etsy for your Etsy shop. And you can find us at marmalead.com, which is marmalead.com.
And we have a very special guest with us today. We have Danielle from the Merriweather Council. Thank you so much for joining us, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a real pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're going to do a kind of a fun thing today. Now, we've done this in the past with a couple guests. We're going to do another two-part episode because Danielle's got some really good topics to chat about with us. So we're going to jump into kind of an overview of her story and how she got started with Etsy and some information about the Merriweather Council, what she sells there. And then we're going to dive into talking about your web presence and how you can really leverage that as an Etsy seller, not just for your Etsy shop, but for things beyond that. And then, stick around for the following week where we will air episode 2 of the two-part series, where we're going to do a deeper dive into pricing. A fun topic that we haven't covered here recently, I don't think. But Danielle's got some great information there, too, so we're looking forward to that.
Those are both really good topics that I love to talk about.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. They seemed really interesting. You sent over a write-up to us beforehand, and you had some really cool stuff to say in there. I think people are going to get a lot out of this. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, can you give us a little bit of your backstory and how you got started with Etsy and how that all went?
Yeah, of course. So I graduated college in 2010. With a BFA in 3D fine arts with a concentration in fibers.
Wow.
That's the official name of my degree. But basically that just means I spent 4 years of college making art, and primarily in the fashion of soft materials in three-dimensional forms.
Okay.
So there was weaving, there was knitting, crocheting. Like, most people don't believe you can go to college for that, but I did. And it was awesome. And
Nice.
I was planning to go to graduate school after, like immediately following graduating college, because of the viable options that were presented to me as like an art major. What do you do with your life? Going to graduate school seemed like the best option for me at the time because I loved college, and I was like, okay, I could just continue college,
Sure.
basically, right? And so that was my plan. And then at the very last minute, super long story short, I decided not to go because of some issues I was having with the university I was going to go to. And I didn't have any plans. All my friends had plans. They knew what they were doing. They were off on their way doing whatever they were going to do. And I didn't have any plans. So I decided to start my own business because I had always loved going to craft fairs. And I went to school in Boston, which is like a very vibrant art community. So I was constantly surrounded, of course, obviously in my school, but also in the city, of just craftspeople and artisans selling their work. And I was like, I want to try that. So that's what I did because, I didn't have anything else going on. And, it was a slow start, just like everybody, of course. But I spent a lot of time learning and researching and testing things and trying stuff. And eventually it started to take off.
Wow.
And then that was my full-time gig for about 5 years. And all through that time, people were asking me, and I loved to talk shop with other people and strategize and all this stuff. But people would always ask me, like, how are you doing this? What are you doing? What's your plan? And I was teaching people, but like unofficially. And then I started integrating that more. Like doing that with intention, actually having like a system for teaching people what they were already asking me. So now I sort of run my service-based business alongside my product-based business. And that's where we are today. But I pretty much was like full-time income on Etsy for 5 years. So
wow, that's fantastic.
I know that's probably mostly what your listeners would be interested in.
Yeah.
The product-based business. So
yeah,
it was really fun to see you can turn nothing into something, basically. And I love Etsy for the opportunity that it provides, that it provided to me, that it's provided to so many other people. So I'm always been pro Etsy.
Yeah. So was Etsy part of your original business plan then when you were kind of deciding what you wanted to do with this and start everything up? Or were you trying to find local craft fairs, or like what was your plan originally?
So my plan originally was, get on Etsy, because I was always, I actually did like my senior project about like Etsy artisans and like small business owners. And I was so interested in, my teachers were kind of like, yeah, that's cute, but you're not really going to do that, right? And I'm like, probably, yeah, since this other thing isn't working out. But yeah, I mean, originally my business plan pretty much was just to be on Etsy. And then to try to get into some of these markets that were in the Boston area. But that's like a whole other world. Like once you are there, you're like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. So, but being online is so much more accessible and a little less, labor intensive, lugging stuff around to shows. But yeah, Absolutely. That was pretty much my plan, was be on Etsy and just kind of take it month by month at this point, because like I said, I really didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. But yeah, Etsy was a huge part of that original plan.
That's awesome. Yeah, Boston it's a fun place. It's a really big metro area too. So like it would have a huge audience for craft fairs and stuff like that, I would think. But I mean, man, you can't beat the audience that Etsy brings to the table, and being able to ship all over the place is fantastic.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And I mean, two completely different experiences, really, like selling in person and selling online. And both were fun. But obviously, there's only so much you can do craft show wise. There's only so many hours in the day for that, and daylight hours. So it's nice to be online where things are 24/7 and supplement with these in-person events. So that's kind of what I did. But yeah, it was primarily an Etsy thing for me at first.
Now, did you already know exactly what sort of products you wanted to include in your shop right off of the bat? Or did you kind of use some of those in-person interactions to hone in on what people might be interested in and build out your products that way?
Definitely. I always tell people this, like, I've learned so much from doing in-person events, like hearing what other people say about your work, and like the interactions you have with people can really inform the kind of work you do produce more of or stop producing altogether or whatever. But I wasn't really sure what I wanted to sell long term. I just sort of started selling a few different things. And then I was like, oh, this takes too long. Forget that. Or, like my own process, figuring out what would work with the space I had available to me, the materials I had or could find long term. And then just what was marketable, because a lot of selling on Etsy is really finding a product that people actually want to buy, not just selling a product that you like to make, which is always the hurdle. But yeah, I started selling machine sewn projects and embroideries. But then quickly I was like, I really prefer embroidery because I don't want to have to be dependent on this machine. Like I am the machine.
Yeah.
So that's always been my thing, is I want to be able to bring stuff with me from this room to that room. And I struggled with my degree in a lot of ways because of weaving was such like this. Weaving was like the ultimate project you could do as a fibers major. But I was like, I can't bring this loom with me from this room to that room, so I don't like weaving. But embroidery is great because it's super portable and the materials are really easy to find. And I just felt like that was really where I found most of my groove. And I loved embroidery. So that's kind of where I focused my efforts. And then over time, the products themselves, like what embroidered products I was selling, changed a little bit. Yeah, it was always about really colorful, like home decor based type things. And then evolved more into like wearable, like jewelry pieces, which is obviously highly marketable. At first, I had no idea, but I had some idea. And then I just kind of let it sort itself out.
So when you got started basically from scratch at the beginning of this to the point of being a full-time successful Etsy seller, do you remember how long it took till you got to the point of not necessarily, your full up and running speed, but the moment when you first realized, I think this is going to work. Like, I think I can make this work.
I always thought I could make it work. I just knew it was going to take time. I really do trust in my own ability to self-motivate. And I was very motivated to make this work. Like I said, I had nothing else going on. I wasn't married, didn't have any kids, no pets, not like it was just me and my business, right? Like I didn't have an obligation to anybody else. So this was like, I dedicated my life to this. So I knew I was like, I'm going to make this work. It's just a matter of like, when will it start to work in a way that makes me happy that it's working at this level? But I would say it was probably like 9 months to a year before it was like steady. And even then it was steady, but it was like, okay, I still need to be making more. And then, you know, over the next couple years, it really like solidified, like this is dependable. And a lot of it depended on how much effort I exerted. So like if there were months where, you know, I didn't exert as much energy, or I had more shows and, you know, the Etsy stuff sort of like fell on the wayside or whatever. The great thing about Etsy is it can sort of self-sustain to a certain extent, but you do still have to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So like, depending on what I was doing, you know, the income was coming from different places or was varied, and it still is. And I know for most of the people I work with, it does vary from month to month, but dependable was like, you know, a year, between a year and 2 years. So, but I knew I was like, I have to make this work. Otherwise my parents are going to make me get a real job. So,
what was their timeline,
you know, like
for that?
helping me. And, I mean, I think they were sort of like just trying to be supportive, because my graduate school thing literally fell apart like the day before I graduated. And they were like, we'll help you do what you need to do. Like they were planning on, you know, helping me, I guess, get started in grad school and whatever. But my grad school thing was going to cover all my living expenses and stuff too. So it was kind of like a weird situation for them. And they were like, we weren't expecting this, but that's cool. They trusted me too in my like self-starterness. Yeah. And my dad is an entrepreneur as well. So they sort of understand the process and they were happy to help me, but they were definitely like, all right, you need to prove that this is going to work.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome. It worked out for the better then, it sounds like. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, I'm like, I'm really glad I didn't go to graduate school, because I was really just going because I was like, I don't know what else to do. And this seems like the most like what I'm currently doing, which is being in school. Yeah. So I will continue to do that.
Sure,
but yeah, I'm kind of glad it didn't work out, because this was so much better for me, like lifestyle wise. I didn't really want to be a student. I just didn't want to be like a real like human adult, try to have to work on my own. So, but yeah, it was a blessing in disguise, I guess.
We now interrupt your regularly scheduled broadcast to bring you the very last Easter egg in May, which is to wish you a happy Memorial Day from all of us at Marmalead.
One of the things you sent over to us was that you found success on Etsy through SEO and through appealing to what Etsy was interested in. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what you mean by appealing to what Etsy's interested in?
Yeah. So I was, like I said, super like hyper tapped into this whole thing. Like, I need to make this work, like researching all the time, reading all the time, observing all the time. And I saw and understood that Etsy is this like amazing tool for what I'm doing. Like, it is exactly aligned with what I want to do, and it's going to help me make it possible to do it. But there's all these like underlying clues that people tend to kind of miss, and I would just like tap into them. I mean, this has evolved over time, but they used to release these like highly specific, like, these are the trends we're interested in right now, like seasonally. Now they kind of don't do it as often, or they do it in like different ways, like a little bit less obvious, but they would like release these reports, and I'd be like, okay, how can I take what I'm currently doing and just like make it fit these trends, or like rename something to fit this trend? And I was able to get like a lot of really decent visibility just from like watching what they were interested in and what they were promoting and making my products fit into that. Like, and I don't mean like I developed new products to fit trends. I just mean like I took a product I already had and like made it in the right colors, or, you know, took something that was maybe at the back of my shop and renewed it with a fresh, you know, title or different key phrase in there or something. And then, because Etsy really does rely on its sellers to have marketing materials. And like, why shouldn't my piece be their marketing material if that's going to do me some favors, right? That's free advertising to this audience that's super warm to the idea of purchasing handmade, and we can assume they sort of understand what they're looking at, and the barrier is a lot lower for someone who's coming to Etsy as opposed to someone I have to go out and find on something like Instagram, which, by the way, barely existed when I started.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like I was just able to sort of like leverage the power of what they had put out. But also at the time, there were a lot of teams and like treasuries and that kind of thing. And that was a real big part of getting traffic at the time too. And like, even though that doesn't exist anymore, there are other things, like there's always going to be something Etsy's doing that we can appeal to as sellers, right? And so that's what I was doing, just constantly like, what are they putting out? Let me pay attention to what they're saying. And then just using that information that they were giving us to help them help me, basically.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But I mean, so much has changed, but there's still things like that you can tap into, and they will continue to change, but they're always going to be there. So that's awesome.
Richie, I've been like monopolizing the questions here. I apologize if you wanted to jump in and shout something out. I didn't mean to like take over.
It's okay. It's been flowing well and I've been enjoying it.
Okay.
I guess I'm part of the audience right now.
All right. So Danielle, one of the things we wanted to talk with you about, and kind of at like the focus of part one of this 2-part series, is talking about how you can take your web presence and really leverage that for purposes beyond just your Etsy shop.
Yeah. So my thing is like, whether you sell, like I always want people who sell on Etsy to also have their own website, just for like, security reasons and autonomy. But no matter where you're selling, whether that's on and off Etsy or only off Etsy or only on Etsy, there's so many opportunities beyond just like someone comes to your shop and buys something and that's the end of it. But like that, especially with Etsy sellers, that's what people hyper focus on. It's like, I need to make more sales. I have to find more customers. And my thing is like, okay, yes, obviously that's great. We want to have more customers, more sales, whatever. But if we leverage what we're putting out there into the universe on these platforms, we can attract opportunities that are so much bigger than just one person buys something from our shop and we never hear from them again. Meaning like attracting people to us who aren't necessarily customers, but who are like influencers who will share or who will collaborate with you to get you, it's the long version, the long way to get new and fresh traffic to your shop, but it's a very lucrative way that's ultimately more profitable than one person comes to your shop and makes a purchase. Or like big brands like Crate and Barrel, West Elm, Land of Nod, that is no longer whatever it's called now. But those kind of things where these bigger brands want to work with artists to develop product that involve licensing or, selling their work through their channels, Anthropology, Urban Outfitters. Urban Outfitters has had sort of like a little bit of a shaky history with artisans, but like Anthropology is constantly tapping artists to do exclusive lines for them. And those people who reach out on behalf of those companies or these influencers or people who buy for the sets of movies or TV shows, they are finding us the same way customers are, but they're looking for similar things, but different. They don't care necessarily how much your shipping time is or whatever, how many days is it going to take to process this order? But they care about things like, can you show that you've made a lot of these things? Or like, what can you show us a portfolio of work or, a professionalism that like your average Etsy shopper maybe doesn't care so much about. They want to see your contact info, like all that kind of stuff. People sort of forget, like there are other people out there looking that are not just like one-off customers. So I always encourage people to consider that, alongside the customers that are coming, because there's so many lucrative opportunities that people could be open to or would be open to and could achieve if they just made their site just as much a storefront as it is a portfolio entryway into your business.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, somebody in that corporate role looking at it is definitely going to be looking to, when they have to bring things up the ladder, they want to make sure that things look good and that they're not going to, look silly in front of their boss when they're like, no, really, look how cool this is. They're like, how do we reach them? They have their AOL ID on there. Like, we're just gonna, fire that up and go contact them, right? Like, everyone wants to look good down the line.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Things like that, like making it easy for people to contact you through email, not a contact form or an Etsy convo, but like an actual email.
Yeah.
Or, making it obvious that you have a specialty, because a lot of times people maintain that thing that I had when I started, which is, I don't know what I'm selling, so I'm just going to sell a bunch of stuff. But eventually you trim it down, but some people, they like maintain that forever and ever. And it's like, that's confusing. Like, we want to see like a specialty and like a breadth of experience, telling people like, I've been featured X, Y, and Z place. Usually, features beget features and that kind of thing. Like, you want to use everything that's happened to you as a seller to create new opportunities for yourself as a seller and as a business person. And I think that's kind of the mental shift that people sometimes don't have, or like they're sort of working to achieve, or they don't know that they should be thinking of it, is yes, you're an Etsy seller or you're a seller of products, but like, you are also a business owner. And as a business owner, it's your responsibility to find and nurture new opportunities that are interesting to you for your business. Because it's not just you anymore. It's like the business, which I know like it's hard for artists, especially people who make things themselves, to separate themselves from their business. But once, I think that's part of it too, is like making it like, it's not they're buying from me, or it's not they want to talk to me. It's like they want to use my product, or they want to use my work for whatever. And those opportunities, like I said, they tend to be more profitable than just one person comes and buys something. Because if you're only focused on one sale at a time, then you're always worrying about one sale at a time, which is a really hard place to be. And people always ask about different revenue streams or whatever. And it's like, that's one of them. So you want to make it possible for your business to have those opportunities. And it's usually pretty simple. It's just a matter of like filling out your shop, like have more than 5 listings, show more than 2 images, like make it easy for people to see like you are a professional at what you do. You have a specialty, you're really good at it. Style it in such a way that it inspires people to think, oh, that could work for my thing, my TV show or whatever, right? I've definitely had students who their work has been picked up and placed in the background of like some set somewhere, like a pillow or art on the wall.
That's awesome.
I'm like, that's awesome, right? Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And, like, there's been stories of actresses wearing shirts or jewelry on TV, and then people find out where it's from and they sell out like immediately. Like, I know the most popular story I know of like that is when Rory Gilmore wore a shirt that said like, talk nerdy to me, or something about books or being a nerd or whatever. And the person who like sold it like immediately sold out of it. And it was popular for like years because she wore it on Gilmore Girls. And stuff like that is like, that's a crazy, amazing opportunity that probably manifested itself without you even knowing about it. Right. It's kind of interesting to think of your shop, whether it's on or off Etsy, as this little portal for people to work with you in lots of ways, rather than, there's different ways for people to take profitable actions that are not just they put it in their cart and they bought it. Even something as simple as someone who has a large Pinterest following, pinning something of yours. Like, it only takes one pin to go a little bit viral, So little things like that. People always overlook optimizing their shop for Pinterest. Like, you don't even have to do anything. Like, if someone else is doing it for you, like, why would you not optimize your shop to work well on Pinterest? So stuff like that is like little simple things that can really unlock more potential. And then eventually, if those things work out, it will alleviate that anxiety of like, I have to make 3 sales today. I have to make 5 sales this week or whatever, which is where so many people are.
Right.
So it's nice to sort of just like make it work more for you. You're going to do the work anyway. So make that work last longer as other people encounter it, basically. That's my theory. And a lot of it is is like you're going to do it anyway. Just do it in a way that makes sense for multiple purposes, like not just the one-off customer, but like all these other people.
Definitely. It opens things up to a much larger audience too than just the shopper audience that's immediately accessible to you, you know?
Exactly. And even the audience of like I was saying, appealing to Etsy, like being featured by Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that comes down to whether your shop is not just, is it friendly to the customer to buy from, but is it featureable?
Right.
Like optimizing your shop means so much more than getting found in search, but that's what everybody thinks.
Right.
And like, obviously that's huge, but like optimizing for other things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at your shop and saying, is this the kind of place that Etsy would want to send traffic? You know, maybe I have 5 listings, like you were saying before, that have amazing SEO and they pull people in really well. But is Etsy really going to feature my shop if I only have 5 things in there? Aren't people going to show up and be like, that's it? You know?
Exactly. Or even little things like offering international shipping is huge for an Etsy feature, because if Etsy is going to feature it, like people in other countries will see it. And so they want those people to be able to buy it, because the more people who are able to buy it, the more people who will buy it, the more money they make. So you have to kind of think of it like just little things, but they make a big impact if you can sort of bring them together.
Sure.
Yeah.
If people want to hear more about this topic or learn more about you, where should they go?
I am at merriweathercouncil.com, also merriweathercouncilblog.com, and on my podcast, the Merriweather Council podcast. Very creative name. But all of that is MERRIWEATHER Council, COUNCIL.com.
Awesome. And your podcast is listed under your blog site, I believe.
Yes.
So if anyone is listening to this as a podcast and want to check out another fun Etsy podcast, that's a great one to look at.
Have several Etsy topics, Etsy specific topics, and not Etsy specific topics on my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is at merriweathercouncil.com. You can get to everything from there. You can obviously find it in iTunes as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we're excited too, because we're going to be back with you in the following episode to talk about pricing.
Yes, my favorite.
So everyone should stay tuned for that one coming out next week.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. This was awesome. Can't wait to chat more.
Yeah.
All right. For everyone else, we will see you guys next time on Etsy Jam. What is up? Gordon from Marmalead here, and I wanted to give you a quick reminder that this is the last Etsy Jam in May. So if you've been following along and playing our Easter egg game with us, make sure you shoot us a message over at success@marmalead.com and let us know what Easter eggs you caught in the May jams. The next one will start the June jams, and we'll start a whole new fresh round of the competition.